Well, one thing I wanted to comment on is not only showing the brutality of war, but World War II war. And I think watching war movies from different eras is also important to visualize. Like I can read about the different gear that they had, the different bullets or not bullets, different guns and different things like the flamethrowers, things like that are unique to that era. And sometimes it shows things like how their helmets worked. I don't think that was really the case in World War II World War I that they had as bulletproof of helmets. And so there was a one time when the guy got shot in the helmet and then he took it off and then got shot in the head. Like that's something that would happen in World War II that wouldn't really happen anywhere else. And that's different from like 13 Hours where it's a very modern take on it's a very modern story. And it's just different. Even the way that they treated wounded in the field is just stick them with morphine, get them out of the way as soon as possible. And it's just a lot more gritty, and yet it's not super old like World War I or even the Civil War. It's just, I don't know. It's interesting to me.
I do like what you said, Seth, about it being like, I think being able to look at war movies from different time periods is a really interesting thing. Like, what was the Glory? A movie about a black regiment in the Civil War.
Oh,
it's very interesting to see, like, not only how it's portrayed just with the time of when it was created, but also just like how the battles went. It's so different to see how the battles went then versus, I mean, honestly, if we're talking about war movies, why the heck have we not talked about Braveheart?
Yeah,
technically that's a war. Like there's the differences between them is really interesting. And again, like in my head, it's a case of like these, like the men that are being portrayed in these movies are actual men that have fought and died. And the way that they die is gruesome and bloody and awful. And I don't want us to have another war. I don't want that. But it's a case of like this is what happens in war. This is war. It's very interesting, honestly.
Well, and I think this is kind of the difficulty of, and again, kind of going back to like the guy thing where it's like, you know, like there's like this innate sense of like guys, of men specifically, kind of like just like having like an urge to be like warriors or whatever. And there's like this there's like a paradox of sorts where it's like there's like the glorification of war, but there's also the hatred or the disgust of war. And there's like this, I think like with like all guys, like you can kind of understand and relate to that a little bit, where it's like, you know, there's an attraction to like fighting and like fighting the good fight and slaying the bad guys and doing all that sort of thing. There's also like, okay, but because of the 21st century and like the horrors of the world wars specifically kind of shattered all of the illusions of the dreams of glory that you can have in war. Like there is no glorification of war generally, especially in like the West, like that those died in the trenches of Verdun and the invasion of Japan and Russia and all of that. Like the Western media particularly, like, we don't want to glorify that, generally speaking. But at the same time, there's still like this urge and like an innate desire to kind of almost have that, and it's like this paradoxical thing, especially when you start considering again, you know, what does the Bible teach and like what does Christ teach, and you know the whole concept of loving thy neighbor. But at the same time, in the Old Testament, like the Israelites were like literally told to engage in fighting as well. So there's a kind of that tension that I think that exists. That's difficult to unravel about like war movies, and you know, I've already mentioned it about like, you know, what's acceptable and what's not, and that's a difficult thing to say. And I think it's going to be a bit of a personal thing. But that's kind of the theme that I'm picking up throughout a lot of this talking is, you know, what is acceptable for war? Like, should we just like totally say it's all bad? But at the same time, you know, sometimes you need to fight. And like, there's also like a desire to just like, you know, there is like this weird desire to glorify war, whether in propaganda from state propaganda or just, you know, just like stories that we write and produce and about them. I don't know. It's kind of interesting.